Rookie quarterbacks and first-time head coaches and what realistic expectations should be. That plus more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for April 13th, 2026.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcast network. You know, we're very proud of that. We're also very proud of the fact that this show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. That's why we shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, as many of you do, got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for you, 707-654-4693. We'll close out the show as we normally do, hearing from you. Calls, texts, a lot of great feedback gathered over the weekend. We'll get as many in as possible coming up, segment number 3. Segment number 2, we're going to continue with our thoughts on round number 2 for the Silver and Black. Late last week, talked about trading up into the back end of round 1 for a particular player or two. Who would you have your eyes on? Today, want to talk about sticking and picking. I'll tell you how this conversation even popped up. A couple players that I still have on my mind in that round number 2, that number 36 overall selection, and we'll kind of compare and contrast. But we'll stick with the theme, round number 2, coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, and really, it just has to do with rookie quarterbacks and first-time head coaches. We'll jump into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started today. So over the weekend, saw a really good article from Ryan McFadden from ESPN. It's on ESPN.com right now. Matter of fact, he dropped it on the 9th, but I just saw it over the weekend. So really good stuff, but obviously it caught my attention because it has to do with rookie quarterbacks and rookie head coaches and that combination. And really, it's called How Raiders Can Learn from the Past with Mendoza and Kubiak. So one, I encourage you to go read the whole thing. Really good stuff by Ryan McFadden. I'll see him later on this week at the Raiders facility when they get ready for John Spytek and company to meet with the media ahead of the draft. But yeah, he does a really good job. He took over for Paul Gutierrez, who now works for Raiders.com. But he puts in this article, how the Raiders can learn from the past with Mendoza and Kubiak. If the Raiders indeed draft Mendoza with the first pick on April 23rd, it'd be the second time in franchise history and 11th time in the common draft era since 1967 that a quarterback who wasn't taken first overall was paired with the first-time NFL head coach. That excludes interim coaches mid-season. That blew my mind, first of all, that it was only going to be the 11th time in the common draft era. That goes back to 67. Think about all the turnover that there is when it comes to head coaches in the league, how quickly a coach gets hired, how quickly a coach gets fired, and how many times quarterbacks are being drafted number 1 overall. For this to only to be the 11th time that it's happened kind of caught me off guard. And again, that's why I read articles like that, to get a little bit of knowledge that I may not have really realized. So he goes on to say in this article, of the 10 pairing, only former Indianapolis Colts quarterback Andrew Luck and coach Chuck Pagano made the postseason and posted a winning record in their first season together. Luck, who was named to the Pro Bowl after throwing for 4,374 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 18 picks in 16 starts. The Colts were 11-5 and earned a trip to the wild card round in 2012. Now, remember, that Colts team was actually pretty good. Remember, they had the motto "Suck for Luck," and they made the very controversial and, not easy decision to move on from Peyton Manning after the neck surgeries. He ends up in Denver. We know he won a Super Bowl there, but they end up with Andrew Luck. That was the year of Andrew Luck versus RG3. Obviously, Andrew Luck goes number 1 overall to the Colts. RG3 goes to Washington, the then Redskins, and obviously Andrew Luck's career plays out better than RG3's, even though RG3, he stuck around the league for quite a while, but injuries hurt him, and obviously injuries hurt Andrew Luck as well. That's why he retired early. But overall, out of all the 10 duos, the rookie quarterbacks and the first-year head coaches, their overall combined records in their first season was 31, 76, and 1. Whoa. Not a lot of winning, right? 31, 76, and 1. And remember, the Colts won 11 of those games. They went 11-5. So really only 20 more wins amongst the other 9 pairings. So it's not a lot of winning when you combine a rookie quarterback and a first-year head coach, which, again, goes back to what the Raiders are doing, bringing in Kirk Cousins, why that makes even more sense. If you want the Raiders to have a chance to win, it probably makes a lot more sense to start out with the veteran quarterback with the first-year head coach in Clint Kubiak, as opposed to brand new when it comes to the head coach and the quarterback, right? It just makes life a little bit more difficult when the quarterback is trying to get his feet wet and trying to understand what it takes to be an NFL quarterback. And the head coach is also trying to learn how to be a CEO of a team, not just the offensive coordinator like he's been, and he's been really good. And obviously he's been around the league for many, many moons, so he understands what it looks like. But to actually do it, to be in that place where you have to do it, and anybody in any walk of life that goes from being just your, like say me, a guy that has always been an on-air personality, but all of a sudden on the program director too. So now everyone's looking at me for answers for every show, not just mine. I can do my show, right? I could hold mine down, but then all of a sudden I've got to make all the decisions for the radio station. And even though I know what the right decisions are, sometimes boom, 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 when your toes are in the fire, sometimes it's hard to make the right decision or make it quickly enough. And that's, it's going to be part of the learning curve for Clint Kubiak as the as the first year head coach. So again, 31, 76, and 1. So here's the 10 duos that made it happen. Most recently in 2021, the Jaguars, Urban Meyer, Trevor Lawrence. We know how that played out. 2019, the Cardinals, Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray was good until he wasn't. Now he's in Minnesota. Cliff Kingsbury is no longer the head coach there in Arizona. Now he's been turned into an offensive coordinator, and at some point he might turn into a head coach to the game. 2012, we talked about that. The Colts, Pagano, and Andrew Luck. That was successful. 2011, the Panthers, Ron Rivera and Cam Newton. They eventually got to the Super Bowl. They didn't win, but they eventually got to the Super Bowl. 2009, the Lions with Jim Schwartz and Matt Stafford. We know who Matt Stafford is, but Jim Schwartz never turned into being a very good head coach at all. 2007, dun, dun, dun. That's the Raiders with Lane Kiffin and Jamarcus Russell. I don't even have to say anything, do I? I didn't think so. 2005, the 49ers, Mike Nolan and Alex Smith. Alex Smith didn't become successful really until Jim Harbaugh, until he came around. And then all of a sudden, Alex Smith turned into a much better quarterback and really got everything rolling once he got to Kansas City. 2003, the Bengals did it with Marvin Lewis and Carson Palmer. We know how that relationship ended, right? We know how long Marvin Lewis was the head coach there in Cincinnati, and we know what Carson Palmer was until he decided he wasn't going to do it no more, and he was going to sit on his couch. And it took Hugh Jackson to make the call and give him a first-round pick, which I'm still salty about, so let's not go down that road. But, we all know how that played out. Cleveland did it in 99, Chris Palmer and Tim Couch. And then in 89, the Dallas Cowboys, Jimmy Johnson and Troy Aikman. Now, to their point, Troy Aikman and Jimmy Johnson, they had an 0-11 record, right? Troy Aikman went 0-11 while throwing for 1,749 yards, 9 touchdowns, 18 interceptions as a starter under Jimmy Johnson. Aikman would go on to win with Johnson to win 2 Super Bowls in 5 seasons. Aikman finished his career as a 3-time Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP, and 6-time Pro Bowl selection. So it ended up working out in the long run for Troy Aikman, but he was 0-11 with Jimmy Johnson. And we know Jimmy Johnson, a really good coach from what he was able to do in college. And even him, he had struggles, and that team wasn't very good. And they all, struggled together. Eventually, they got it turned around. So, if you're in the camp and the argument of, well, that's why you put them in there immediately so they can, get that experience. That's one way of looking at it. Or you could take the approach that looks like the Raiders are taking. We'll start a veteran quarterback. We'll get, this guy to kind of feel his way through this. And then when they feel comfortable with everything, with the team where they are, and if they feel like everybody's set up for success, then they'll move forward with the rookie quarterback and the first-year head coach. But wanted to bring that to your attention. Again, how the Raiders can learn from the past with Mendoza and Kubiak. Really good article from Ryan McFadden on ESPN.com. I definitely encourage you to go check it out. Coming up in segment number 2, stick and pick. Do they go defense? Do they go for another weapon? What are they going to do? We'll break it down. We'll talk about it coming up. Today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple great sponsors we have here on the show, and the first one is TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth, wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're going to get a major upgrade. Intuit now has stations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar that you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. I also want to tell you about Indeed-sponsored jobs. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you had to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, It's a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And I got a good stat for you. In the minute or so that I've been talking with you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of the boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Right now, all listeners of the Locked On Raiders podcast will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status that it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Again, Indeed.com/podcast. Go there right now. Support the show by saying that you heard about it, again, on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. It's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. I'll get into the conversation of sticking and picking for the Silver and Black when they get to pick number 36 or when they get to round number 2. It's been a conversation that we've had plenty of here on the show. Before we get to that, though, I do want to remind you about the Everydayer Club for ad-free episodes and access to a group chat of all the Locked On Raider podcast listeners. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedonraiders.supercast.com. So, off top, just wanted to pass along this note. I mentioned it in segment number 1 that the Raiders are having a pre-draft presser on Tuesday at Raiders headquarters at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Now, that's right, 1 hour into my local radio show, so I'm going to try to find a way to be there and obviously be on the radio at the same time. So we'll work some magic. Ari will do the best he can, and we'll see how we can set it up. If not, obviously, I'll just bring you some of the highlights of the press conference coming up on Wednesday. But we'll start to get a little bit more of an idea, hopefully, into the philosophy behind John Spytek and the way that they plan on approaching this draft. Now, we know what's going on at the number 1 overall pick. Like, that's an easy one, right? But after that is where the big mystery comes in. So late last week on Friday, as a matter of fact, we were talking about trading into the back end of round number 1 if there's some players that you'd be interested. And that came from Travis Wingfield, who said the Dolphins would be open for business at number 30. But what if the Raiders don't trade up? And the expectations are, at least from everyone that I've talked to, there's not going to be a lot of trades in this draft, at least not a lot of trade ups. Everybody's going to be interested in trading back, but not a lot of trade ups because everyone's trying to prepare themselves for the 2027 draft. Now, whether that ends up coming to fruition or not, well, that remains to be seen. But that's what at least the conversation is right now. Everybody's waiting for 2027. So let's just go with that theory, and let's just say that the Raiders stick and pick there at number 36. On Friday, Ian Cummings from Pro Football and Sports Network was on the morning tailgate with Vince Sapienza, Clay Baker, and Vinny Bonsignore, and he was actually going through the mock draft simulator that we talk about here on the show all the time. He was going through the mock draft, Vince was, while they were doing the interview, and so he said, hey, I just got to pick number 36, the second-round pick for the Raiders, and Caden McDonald, defensive tackle from Ohio State, is there, and Denzel Boston is there, the wide receiver out of Washington. What direction should I go? And I thought that was a really good question because those are kind of the different directions and a lot of times the speculation that's been going on when it comes to the Raiders. A lot of people, including Matt Miller, who I've had on the show many times and was on the pre-draft conference call with them, he mocked Denzel Boston to the Raiders in round number 2, just wanting to add more weapons for Fernando Mendoza. So there's a thought process of you got to have more weapons, you got to have more weapons, you got to have more weapons. And then there's also a thought process of, hey, man, you got to go attack the defense. There's a lot of new on the defense. Obviously, they're going to a 3-4, right? They've got to have a guy along that defensive line that can help out Max Crosby where he doesn't have to be the Lone Ranger. Like, there's a lot of different thoughts, best player available, whatever the conversation is. There's been a lot of back and forth on what the Raiders should do. So Vince Sapienza asked, kind of compare and contrast. Because he asked him, can you compare and contrast Caden McDonald, Denzel Boston? What would you do at 36? Here's that conversation.
It's very, very difficult, man. It's a tough question. Obviously, I think with Caden McDonald, the appeal is that he's a very good orbit DT to build your defensive line around. And we know the interior defensive line. The Raiders, they have some intriguing young pieces, but I think having a guy, a central force, to kind of let players flow around like Caden McDonald can be a very valuable thing. And especially in the modern NFL, you have to be multiple, right? I think the days of a pure 4-3 or a pure 3-4 are over, right? You need to have guys who can, man the zero tech or the one tech at the fulcrum in a pinch, right? And I think Caden McDonald is one guy who's proven that he can do that. He has some appeal, some interest around the draft community as a potential DT1 candidate. He's not quite my DT1, but he is one of my top nose tackles. And 6'3", 326, having the natural leverage, the linear explosion and the power profile, the ability to stack and shed, and the motor as well. He's a very compelling option. But then Denzel Boston, this guy, I think is a player who has the ideal size athleticism component, not just the vertical speed too. Like he's got enough vertical speed, but I think his fluidity as well is very impressive for his size. More of a zone beater than a man beater, not as sudden as some of the smaller guys. But I think Denzel Boston, what he shows on film is a really keen angle intelligence, and that's with stemming through zone looks, but then also at the catch point and leading up to the catch. His vice grip hands get all the attention at 6'4", 212 with over 32-inch arms. But one element of his game that really impresses me is his ability to play body positioning at the catch point. There was one play, I think it was against Michigan this past year, where he was running a post route over the middle of the field, and he was tracking the ball, and he very methodically adjusted his tracking angle to bait a defender into overrunning it, and then he adjusted it inside at the last second to get to snare the ball and kind of lead the DB astray. So those are the kinds of things that Boston can do, in addition to having the size and the length to box guys out, but moreover, the spatial awareness to control the catch.
So there was a really good breakdown, I thought. Ian Cummings for Pro Football and Sports Network. Again, they have the mock draft simulator that I've been using quite a bit, that a lot of you have used as well, and have even texted it into the show and said, hey, this was my draft for the Raiders. So that's his thoughts on McDonald. That's his thoughts on Denzel Boston. And look, I think personally for me, I would go Caden McDonald. And the reason I go Caden McDonald is because I still don't know who Jack Besh is, and I still don't know who Dante Thornton Jr. is. And I think, and I've said this many times, that the Raiders made a mistake by not learning who they had in those two guys, right? They didn't use them enough their rookie year to feel comfortable saying, okay, this is who this guy can eventually be. This is what Jack Besh could evolve to be. Can he end up being Jacoby Myers? Can he be better than that? Like, we don't know because we didn't see it. And now I get it. They see him in practice. They see him every day in the hallways. They see him in film study. So they know who they are a lot better than I know who they are. All I could tell you who these guys are is what we saw on film, what we saw from what they're doing during the games and the the little bit of practice that we get to see. Training camp, we get to see the whole thing, but in the regular season, we don't get to see practice. We just see the individual drills and stretching. So that's a very small 10 to 15 minute window, and then we're out. So we can't see anything else. If I knew for 100% who Jack Besh and Dante Thornton Jr. was, I'd have a lot easier, I think, time with this second round pick. Right, because I could say with 100% confidence, yes, they need another wide receiver. They don't have enough weapons. Or, no, they don't, because these guys can do it. Like, it's a big mystery to me. So I would go Caden McDonald, not to mention I just like him a lot. I think that he could be very disruptive, and he'll be a run stuffer immediately, as you heard Ian Cummings. Matter of fact, Greg Cosell from NFL Films, he did a really good breakdown on McDonald as well, and he's one of the best in the business. I love hearing Greg Cosell when he does any kind of breakdowns. He was actually part of the Ross Tucker podcast, and he broke down Caden McDonald. Check it out.
McDonald is a pure great run defender. And what was unique about him watching his tape is that not only did he win with physicality, but he made tackles. You rarely see a defensive tackle make as many tackles in the run game as Caden McDonald. And that's what really jumped out. I mean, you see a lot of defensive tackles, as you know, they're great, they're physical, they're tough, and they win. They probably get a plus from the coaching staff on particular plays, but they don't necessarily make tackles. He was really good. This guy is a run defender, and that's the way he'll start. He's very limited right now as a pass rusher. He doesn't have a vertical element to his game moving forward to rush the quarterback. Can he become that in time? We don't know the answer to that. But if you're looking for a dominant run defender in the middle of your defense, he is a high-level prospect.
So, again, just more of who Caden McDonald is, that run stuffer, that guy who, he's not super polished as a pass rusher, but if you can have that guy, as Big Lincoln Kennedy always says, have that guy that could be that space eater, and not to mention, these guys at the defensive tackle and nose tackle position, a lot of times they just do that. Space eat. They get those, those guys, they allow the linebackers to come through clean and make a lot of tackles. McDonald makes tackles as well. That's the thing about him. He's not only a guy that can space eat and he can keep those linebackers clean, but he's also making tackles. I just think it would be really good for that Raiders defense to have a guy like that, right? A guy who's putting up some pretty big numbers, as far as tackles throughout the course of the season. And even what he did at Ohio State last year, I want to say he had 74 tackles total at Ohio State, 74 tackles. as an interior guy like that, that's really unheard of. And I believe Adam Butler for the Raiders had 50 last year. So again, I get it. College and the NFL, two different ball games, different rotations. possibly trading up into the back end around number 1 if he's there around 30. But if, like Matt Miller said, he's a round 2 guy and he's there at 36 and he had him going number 38 overall to the Texans, maybe that's the guy that John Spytek and company says, yeah, we're going to get that guy for Robbie Leonard in that defense. I would be comfortable with that. But if they stick and pick at 36, is there a player that you have your eye on that you think if he's there, the Raiders should go and get? Let us know. Again, that was Caden McDonald versus Denzel Boston, but it doesn't have to be exclusive to those guys. So let us know your thoughts. 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you as we close out the show. We'll do that next. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that is FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. And here's what you'll love about it. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. Is this going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder Invitational? Are the San Antonio Spurs going to say something about it? Cade Cunningham is back for the Pistons. How much will that matter for the 1 seed there? What about the Boston Celtics? Are they best in the East even though they're the 2 seed? A lot of questions heading into the NBA playoffs. Well, the one question that we don't have is where to go and have a little bit of fun with them. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts. You have that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before we hear from you, do want to thank you so much for making this the first listen of the day. Off top, we'll start off with a call from Jacob in North Carolina. He's calling to talk about what he hears from people when they're talking about Kirk Cousins and what he believes the Cousins signing was for. Here's Jacob in North Carolina.
Hey, Q. Hey, Ari. Hey, Raider Nation. This is Jacob Mazza, the artist out of beautiful Wilmington, North Carolina. Q, Ari, I'm listening to, the people talk, the comments, and, Kirk Cousins is just this, and Kirk Cousins is just that. He's a footnote for Mendoza. And while I do agree with this, I think the Kirk Cousins signing wasn't for Mendoza. I think the Kirk Cousins signing was more for the new head coach, Clint Kubiak. I mean, this is a rookie head coach. To have a veteran quarterback as a rookie head coach, I think that's the reason why Kirk Cousins came in. And during that time, Mendoza can just sit and develop, learn how to take snaps from under center, learn the formations of a 4-2-5, 4-3, 3-4, 46, blah, blah, blah. Goes on and on and on. There's a lot to develop. How cornerbacks either play man, zone, or play off. They play all these different things. But Kurt knows how to play all this. And I just say, I don't think it's for Mendoza. I believe it is for Kirk Cousins. What do you think? All right, later.
Jacob, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. Cousins being signed more for Kubiak than Mendoza. I mean, it makes sense for sure. It goes back to what we were talking about in segment number 1. We were talking about rookie quarterbacks and first-year head coaches. So it does make sense. Now, he is there to help out Mendoza. Like, make no mistake about that. It is a signing for Mendoza as well, but there's definitely going to be assistance for Clint Kubiak. So, yeah, I mean, two things could be true for sure, and I definitely think that you're onto something. Again, I gave you the numbers. Ryan McFadden put the article out on ESPN.com, gave you the numbers of the overall wins and loss total when it comes to rookie quarterbacks and first-year head coaches, and it wasn't very good. So thanks so much for the call. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Danny in Salinas. Says, good morning, Q. Danny out of Salinas, California. I don't think anybody's talking about the investment the Raiders made in Kirk Cousins. And what I mean by investment is if a quarterback goes down on a contending team the first half of the season and they're, let's say, 1 loss, 2 losses, and they're in contention, that could possibly get us a draft pick if we trade Kirk Cousins in the middle before the deadline. And that would catapult Fernando Mendoza to the starting role. You get some draft capital back for Kirk Cousins for next year if, let's say, a starter on a contending team goes down. Nobody's talking about that. I think it was a great investment by the Raiders as Danny and Salinas. And yeah, I think that there's something to be said about that as well, right? If the Raiders feel comfortable with passing the sticks on to Fernando Mendoza and a quarterback goes down like we saw the Colts last year, they end up turning to Phillip Rivers, who was in retirement. He was coaching his high school team, his son's high school team. And he comes out of retirement for the Colts. So, yeah, I mean, there could be something to be said about that, especially if it's a team that Kirk Cousins is familiar with. I definitely believe there's some truth to that. So, yeah, I mean, I think that for what they're paying, $1.3 million this year, $10 million next year, $11.3 total million. That's it. And the Falcons are paying $8.7 for a total of $20 million, fully guaranteed for Cousins. I think that's a no-brainer. It makes all the sense in the world. Thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Got time for a couple more. Got a call from Ohio Raider 419. He's calling about a subject we talked about last week, and that was players and coaches with something to prove. Here's Ohio Raider out to 419.
What up, Dope Q? Ohio Raider from the 419. I usually text in, but I'm going to keep this call simple about something to prove. Q, we all have something to prove, whether it's in football, whether it's in our daily grind at our job. It just reminds me of these gentle parenting days that we have. Everybody wants to make things easy. Q, there's always something to prove. If they don't have something to prove, Q, they're going to be on the waiver wire. Go Raiders. Ohio Raider from the 419.
OHIO. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, man, I agree, right? If you don't have something to prove or you don't believe that you have something to prove, you're probably on the way out. Or maybe you're already out. But yeah, there's definitely something to prove for everybody. I didn't disagree that there was something to prove for the coaches, the GM, the owner. I didn't disagree with that. I just didn't agree with the fact that, well, the players don't have anything to prove. They've already shown what they can do. That's why they're in the league. That, to me, was really, I don't know where that came from. That couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. And the funny thing about that is that wasn't even the conversation. The conversation was presented to me by Chantel Chan on the squad show, just asking me, Q, what players do you think have something to prove? And that turned into me saying that the players had something to prove and nobody else did. That, which was kind of weird. So it was a wrong perception of even the question. And if you think at some stage of the game, a player in the National Football League doesn't have anything to prove, you're wrong, right? Again, the NFL stands for not for long for a reason, because you will be out of there quick, fast, and in a hurry. Thanks so much for the call. Do appreciate you. We'll close out with a text from Mark in Utah. It says, hey, Q, it's Mark from Utah. Thanks for all that you do for Raider Nation. I listen to your show every day and the squad show as well. I want to ask you about two players from Utah, Spencer Fano and Caleb Lamu, both offensive linemen at Utah. From what I've read about these guys, they're both projected to be good fits in a zone blocking scheme. If one of them is there at 36, do you think one of them would be a good pick for the Raiders? I know the measurables aren't perfect, but those guys were great in college. I'm a little biased, but I think that they're both great football players. That's Mark in Utah with the text. Yeah, thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. Yeah, I think both those guys are really good. They're both projected. Well, Fano's going to go early. He won't be available for the Raiders at 36. That I can guarantee. But Caleb's a different story. A first-round guy, second-round guy. He's kind of a fringe first-round guy, but probably a second-round guy. The Raiders, definitely. We're talking about weapons. We talked about Denzel Boston. I'm talking about, Caden McDonald for the defensive line. They definitely could go and bolster the offensive line, right? I don't think any of us believe that the offensive line, that work is still in progress. It's not done. It's not complete just because they signed Tyler Linderbaum. Like, that's not going to solve everything. They still have to get a cohesive unit there and figure out who the best five guys are going to be and what they're going to do moving forward. And I believe John Spytek every year is going to draft a couple offensive linemen. So I do believe that this year is going to be the same, right? He'll definitely do that. So, yeah, I mean, look, if they look at it and say, hey, Caleb is the best option here at number 36, we can get a wide receiver later, we can get a defensive tackle later, we can get this, that, and the other later, cool, right? That's the beauty of it when you look at the Raiders and what they need, because they need just about everything. They just need a lot of talent, right? There's been too many drafts that they've come away with only one guy here, one guy there, and not, 3 or 4 or even 5 guys coming out of the draft that they feel really good about. That's the problem. They need a stacked talent. So John Spytek has to do a really good job with this draft. They have 10 picks currently. We know where the first pick's going to go. But what is he going to do with the other 9? And is he going to turn that into 10, 11, 12? We saw him turn 8 into 11 last year. So how many draft picks is he going to end up coming away with when it's all said and done? But, yeah, if they go offensive line, I know it's not something we talked about very much. I wouldn't have any problem. Obviously, Fano, is, like I said, would be a heck of a player to pick up, but he won't be available when the Raiders are picking at number 36. But maybe Lamu will be. And if they decide to go in that direction, then they bolster up the offensive line as far as I'm concerned. But thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Thanks for listening to the show and the squad show as well. The squad show will actually happen tomorrow. I got another one of my famous dentist appointments this morning, so just a cleaning. But, yeah, just part 2 of the cleaning, that's all. So I got that this morning, so we'll push the squad show till tomorrow. Big Link, he'll be right here where I'm at, Studio Q, at least that's what we're expecting. Big Link to be here in studio, so me, Chantel, and Big Link, 7:30 to 8:30, but on Tuesday as opposed to today. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.